the government and corporate whores who rob us blind and lock the doors. Lord, I'll offer a great deal if you teach us how to heal. Oh, I wish that we could heal. I wish that I could heal.
Hi, everybody. This is Richard Sachs, your host on Lost Arts Radio. Nice to be with you again. Hope everything's going well for you. And on this tonight's Sunday show, it's return of a friend of ours who's been on many times before, Dr. Gabriel Cousens. And I asked him to come back, please, after the last great show on 5G, another immediately urgent, important topic to understand and to get some resolution on. And the reason that we asked him back is because we've got quite a few people asking us about situations that concern diabetes. And everybody's heard of it at this point. It's rampant all over the country and all over the world, as far as I know. And the official position of the most advanced modern scientists in our government and medical industry is, don't worry because it's completely incurable. But if you are really fortunate, you can take all the drugs, which will make you worse, but that's the best standard of care, and that's what you should definitely do. And the problem is that it may not be entirely certain that it's completely uncurable. There's somebody that wrote a book called There Is a Cure for Diabetes. Oh, that's a guest we have tonight. That's Dr. Cousens. And so we thought that would be perfect for him to come on and say how this could possibly be true when all the official channels are saying, no question at this time, the science is settled, it's incurable, and as long as you take drugs and get worse, it's going to be great. And so we want to clear up those discrepancies and see what the reality is. So welcome, Dr. Cousens. I'm really glad you're here. It should be fun.
Well, I'm really happy to be here. And there is this mythical belief that it's incurable. For example, New York Times, one of the great bastions of false news, says diabetes has no cure. It's progressive and fatal.
Yes. There are thousands of cases proving that too.
Yeah. The American Diabetes Association, 2007, said diabetes is an incurable disease and is an urgent health problem in the Latino community. Well, it's true. It's definitely urgent. And American Diabetes, again, says diabetes is an incurable disease that affects the body's ability to produce or respond properly to insulin. So, there is an old story, and it's really simple. When you go in the wrong direction, you actually end up in the wrong direction.
That's an amazing coincidence, yeah.
Yes, but they see it that way as reality. Now, the first cured case of diabetes was with Max Gerson in 1920s. And Dr. Gerson cured Albert Schweitzer of type 2 diabetes. We want to make that clear, of type 2 diabetes completely in the 1920s.
Could you tell us, before we go too much further, for people that don't know, what's bad about diabetes? What does it do to you? I mean, in what you feel and your life changes and stuff like that.
So, sure. And the way it goes is that if it isn't treated, there is I'm going to use a word, a toxic metabolic pattern that ends up destroying every levels of your health. And that means 85% of the people develop blindness or retinopathy. I've actually reversed people who've come here with blindness.
Wow.
Okay. In our 3-week program. We're not talking months, we're talking 3 weeks. Okay. It creates 70% of the people have neuropathy where they can't feel their feet and their hands. 20 to 50% have a kidney degeneration where they end up on kidney dialysis and die within 4 or 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
There's over 600,000 diabetics here in this country, and about 600,000, about 80,000 develop leg lesions, and a great many of them actually have amputations, and usually die within 5 years. 50% die within 5 years.
And this is actually caused by not being able to handle the insulin, right? Directly.
Well, it's more complicated than that. We'll get to that.
Okay.
Just giving you what we also see is your brain shrinks twice as fast with diabetes. And so you have real cognitive decline. Usually in 3 weeks, people come in with a memory cognitive ability of 2 and maybe go to 9. Just in 3 weeks.
Wow. Okay.
Serious degeneration. Part of the problem is that your hippocampus, which requires sugar, glucose to work, that's your memory center. And if your brain gets insulin resistance, it can't get in. The sugar can't get in. So that's another thing. So we have, these are very serious chronic diseases, chronic degeneration. For men, a great many men after 15 years with diabetes become impotent. Okay, so you lose your brain, you lose your sexual energy, you can't see, your vision decreases, you have neuropathy, you have gastric paresis, your digestion greatly diminishes. So there's really a lot of very chronic, debilitating things that really, really make it hard to function in the world.
Okay.
After about 15 years. Generally speaking, people lose 10 to 19 years off their life. That's kind of another thing to understand. So, and it can be reversed. Now, that's the beauty of it, okay? And that's my work really beginning in 2007. I actually had been working on this since 1973, not as specifically. Hypoglycemia, diabetes, blood sugar imbalances. And then I was looking for, what can we do to make a positive impact in the world? There's about 400 million people who have diabetes. One person dies every 10 seconds. The biggest diabetes country is India. Second is China. And third is U.S. So in this country, we have approximately, and this is a low count, 30 million diabetics and about 86 million pre-diabetics. So that brings me to a definition of, what does it mean cure? We have to turn off the toxic metabolic program to cure it, which we usually can do in 3 weeks. Definition of cure means a fasting blood sugar of less than 100, what we call an A1C, which measures the amount of glucose or fructose combined to protein, hemoglobin in this case, but also DNA, of 5.7 or less. Okay, and those are pretty much your 2 simple criteria. You can do lots of fancy testing. I like to see people, and we'll explain a little bit, have no insulin resistance and no leptin resistance.
Okay.
What's that? What are we talking about? So what turns out is that as that diabetes progresses, the body gets resistant to insulin. So in the initial phases, the insulin goes higher and higher, trying to overcome this resistance. And the result of that higher insulin links you into having higher rates of cancer of the prostate, cancer of the breast, cancer of the endometrium, the lining of the uterus, cancer of the ovaries, cancer of the colorectal areas, and cancer of the pancreas. So those are much, much, much higher in people with diabetes because the excess insulin stimulates the cancers in those areas.
Okay.
So that's another issue with the diabetes. So we kind of have to look at that. And then leptin is a hormone like insulin that when it's secreted, it says stop eating sweets and kind of like it diminishes your appetite. But when you're in resistance, which happens when people are overweight, that's one thing, because leptin comes from the fat tissue. You get resistant to it, and then you get just the opposite. You eat sweets and eat too much. So those are, let's say, the two big hormones involved in the diabetic process. But we want to go deeper and understand it's a chronic para-inflammation. Like the whole body's inflamed, and that inflammation is what drives it. And 75% of the people with diabetes usually die of a heart attack because it creates chronic inflammation, and the cholesterol builds up, and that's what it gets. So it's a bigger syndrome, so to speak. Around the world, the Arab world, and a little bit in the northern African world has very high rates of diabetes, like 50% or more. I have diabetes programs all over the world, diabetes prevention programs. In Papua New Guinea, there are about 45% of diabetics. So what I'll tell you what that means is the elders are living longer than the people who have gone into the whole sugar thing. So literally, the elders are outliving their kids. So it's totally unnatural.
Does that mean the elders are eating more natural food still, or is it residue from earlier?
The junk food came in after the elders are already grown up, and they stay with a healthy diet.
Okay, got it.
Whereas the younger people aren't doing that.
Right.
So you can see it's a big deal. The U.S. rate of diabetes, maybe 10%. Native Americans, we did a march across with Dennis Banks. We led a Native American march across America, and he stopped at every single, or many reservations, and their rate is about 90%. They claim it's 16 to 17%, but it's much, much higher. So it's an endemic thing. We're in the midst of, we've been okay for funding, put it that way, for 238 tribes in America and mainland and Alaska. So, it's a huge problem in the Native American world, which they didn't really have until Europeans came in.
So it's not genetic, it's what they're doing right now, right?
Well, it is, and it's a good question, because the word genetic means, it's hopeless. No, the fact is that if you're eating the right diet, you don't get diabetes. Do you have a greater tendency? Yes. People, if your parents one of your parents has diabetes, you're 70 to 90% more likely to get diabetes. If you had a relative that had diabetes, you're more like 40 to 60. I'm just giving you rough estimates here.
You have less leeway to depart from good lifestyle.
That's the point I'm making. It doesn't mean you're going to get diabetes, but you have to pay more attention.
Okay.
So that's kind of the the message. So there is for type 2 a genetic component, not so much with type 1. Our focus is pretty much type 1. Now, I will tell you by accident, by divine accident, when we did some of our original research, 2 of the people actually were type 1 diabetics. One person healed completely and remains healed now for 12 years. The other person dropped his blood sugars pretty much by like 95%. So, but he wasn't totally cured, okay?
Are type 1 and type 2 different diseases, really, or not?
They're different. Type 1 is an autoimmune disease. What am I saying? You can get your virus, and even in your 40s. First of all, type 1 you see mostly with kids, okay?
Okay.
But you can get a virus in your 20s and develop type 1, because what happens is the immune system gets confused and starts making, in attacking the virus, it starts creating antibodies against the beta cells of the pancreas, which make insulin.
Okay.
So the type 1 that we usually see are allergies to milk, where milk has over 100 antigens, and so people go ahead and, they get vaccinated, and the body, or I just said 2 things. Vaccinations increase the rate of type 1 diabetes, depending on the research, between 40 and about 150%. Okay? Same concept. You get foreign antigens in, the body makes, just like the milk, the body makes antibodies, but it misdoes it, and it makes antibodies against the beta cells of the pancreas. So kids who are vaccinated have a much higher rate of type 1 diabetes, and also in terms of dairy. Those are your big, let's say, players for type 1 diabetes. Type 2 is primarily dietary. That's the difference of the two.
Okay. Now, even though that's a virus that I think, if I understood you right, that is responsible for the onset of type 1.
Well, it could be a virus, it could be one of 100 dairy antigens, or it can be vaccinations, which are a whole bunch of antigens. Those are your 3 big players.
Is the possibility of that actually doing the damage to you correlated with lifestyle differences, or is it independent of that?
You're talking about type 1 or type 2?
1 right now.
Lifestyle makes a huge difference. I get kids who are type 1, and we can get them down to non-diabetic.
Okay.
And in our study, which again was more by accident than design, 21% of the type 1s were healed, meaning they're off insulin with a blood sugar less than 100, and about 30% didn't have to take insulin, but their blood sugars weren't less than 100.
Okay.
So what we have with type 2, there's two breaking down, just so you get the idea. There's type 2 insulin dependent, type 2 non-insulin dependent. For type 2 insulin dependent, we get 96% off their insulin, and 24% are healed. For type 2 non-insulin dependent, meaning they're not taking insulin, okay, 61% are healed, blood sugar less than 100, and 100% are off all medication.
Well, okay, just to make sure I understand this way, you said that type 2 insulin dependent means they're taking insulin. It's not necessarily a difference in the underlying condition that's used to justify the insulin. It's just that they're taking synthetic insulin or external insulin.
Right, and it's not autoimmune. It's not autoimmune, it's dietary.
Right, and so the question comes...
The system is broken down, so they need insulin.
Right. So the question comes up, is the lower success rate caused by damage that occurs from taking the insulin?
It's possible, but I would say it the other way. It's just you're more broken down, over time.
Okay.
It takes long. Our study was only 3 weeks. Okay. When people stay on it, and I didn't track it for a year or two, we didn't have the money to do that.
Right.
More and more people get healed. So it just takes longer of type 2 insulin dependent to get there. There's more healing that has to be done.
So it'd really be interesting to do your 3-week study for a year and see
Correct.
what the results were. Right?
Correct. We just didn't have the funds to do it. Now, what I will say is that really over time, people get better and better. And I think that's, in general, what we're looking at. Now, what's interesting is ours is a 3-week study. There's 2 other studies that are out there. One was just cooked vegan food.
Mm-hmm.
And they did, it was a really good piece of research. But what they did is that they were able to decrease the amount of medications by 46%. Now, I'm talking about decreasing, if you're non-insulin dependent, by 100%.
Right, that's better.
Insulin dependent by 86.4%.
Right. Yeah, and you're saying that even type 1, some of them get better too.
Yeah, that's with live foods. Okay.
Right.
And also, our people started at a fasting blood sugar of 247. Normal is 70 to 85. Okay. Really healthy. And so, and most of them were at about 165 to 168 that were in the American Diabetic Association and also this other vegan study. So we had a huge drop in the overall blood sugars. That's the key I wanted to say with that. You see what I mean?
Yeah. So, now, when you have a drop in overall blood sugar, which is what you're saying you got, does that mean the insulin was more effectively being produced, or what caused that?
Well, nobody can quite answer that question, but I'll give you a hint. In autopsies of people who died of type 1 diabetes, 88% were still producing beta cells of the pancreas, which make insulin.
Huh.
So my theory, based on what I've seen also, is that we diminish like in type 1, but our focus should be type 2 so we don't get that confused.
Okay.
We increase the amount of beta cells. So even though the system is worn out, it regenerates.
Okay.
And we see that happening as short as 3 weeks. That's kind of what I see happening is we're increasing the efficiency of the beta cells, but we're also regenerating them. So as I say, even with type 1s, 88% still had some beta cells. It's not like they don't have any beta cells, but they have inflammation and blocked what we call periductal flow of the insulin coming out. There's a lot of scarring. We do a lot of things to minimize the scarring as well. But the point I'm making is I believe what we're doing is regenerating the beta cells. Now, I had a person who's type 1 diabetic, a child, and came in with really high, what we call A1C, which is the amount of glucose, fructose linked to his hemoglobin, and he significantly dropped. And we measured his insulin production. If it's less than 2, that's considered type 1, and it got up to about 5. So what I believe is happening is in type 1, we're minimizing the autoimmune, maximizing the production of the beta cells of the pancreas. For type 2, I think we're maximizing the beta cells of the pancreas and normalizing the insulin secretion and the leptin secretion. So I think there are different things happening.
Okay. So
now,
go ahead.
One more thing. This is an epidemic. This is why I chose it. So the Centers for Disease Study is saying by 2050, 1 out of 3 people will have diabetes in the United States.
Wow.
For I think we're closer to that now, actually. What we do know is between the ages of 20 and 60, it's maybe 11 to 15% of the population. And above the age of 65, we're looking at 27% of the population has type 2 diabetes.
Wow.
So it's something that increases with age. So they're huge statistics, and that's the point I really wanted to make here in this discussion. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I immediately think of, wow, this is a pretty big national problem, and you know, if we had a little more conscious healthcare system that actually wanted to cure people, now you're not even allowed to say that word anymore, but if they wanted to do that, they should have somebody with the experience that you've had making suggestions for national guidelines type things, right?
Well, the answer is yes. I have spoken at Kaiser hospitals, you know, and they're kind of a network to all doctors at all the Kaiser hospitals. I've spoken to the Russian Congress. There is some interest, okay? In other words, it's not being totally ignored, which I think is important.
Yeah.
And since I came out, there's been one or two other doctors that have kind of followed along with it. And so there's a little bit of movement here that basically is saying, oh, okay, good, we can do this. So it's leaking into the situation. I found it was very interesting to speak to the Russian Congress. I also spoke to the leading consul in Papua New Guinea, since they were having so many deaths from type 2 diabetes. So there's a real interest in different places around the world to do this. But in the United States, it is growing. It's growing. And why is it easier around the world? Obviously, they're not dealing with the pharmaceuticals.
So I would also guess that it might be easier as a rule in smaller countries where you can access the leaders more easily. Is that true?
I think it's somewhat true, but Russia is not, I wouldn't classify as a smaller country.
Yeah, exactly. They have a different attitude.
Yeah. So anyway, those are the things. So what I'm going to say is I'm going to give you a kind of a statement now that we've talked, is that really what type 2 diabetes is chronic accelerating aging.
Wow, okay.
I call it the chronic diabetes degenerative syndrome, but it's accelerated aging, 10 to 19 years off your life, okay? It's genetic and it's epigenetic. So genetic, we just mentioned. Epigenetic are forces that accelerate the diabetes. For example, meat eaters, they did a study with about 1.25 million people, and they found that people eating meat have 35 to 50% more diabetes.
Wow.
It's just an example. But what I'm trying to make is that's an epigenetic, which is not genetic problem.
You could call it a voluntary environmental effect, right? Something like that.
Something like that. And so I looked at a lot of things, which I want to talk about today, do it. But basically, this toxic downgrade results in a leptin, I mentioned that as a hormone, okay, and insulin resistance and other hormonal dysregulations, and includes an imbalance in lipid, protein, and carbohydrate metabolism. So, and what drives it? Chronic inflammation. I call it para-inflammation. That's the key concept to the whole thing. What contributes to it? Well, okay. A diet that's high in simple and complex carbohydrates, particularly if they're cooked animal fat and animal protein. And we'll talk about all this in some detail. Yeah. I just want to give you an overview, okay? Trans fatty acids, which is in all cooked food, processed food, junk food, GMO food, radiation is a big deal, actually. Increases it by about 200%. What am I saying? So in Fukushima, after that happened, 60% of the kids under 12 had type 2 diabetes. That's really big. Okay, I'm just making a. Okay, lack of sleep. If you don't get enough sleep within 1 or 2 days, your fasting blood sugar in the morning rises. Overall toxic exposure, particularly to mercury, lead, and cadmium, pesticides, herbicides. Okay, I mentioned GMO, mineral deficiencies, vitamin deficiencies, antioxidant deficiencies where the free radicals come from radiation. The research around the world does suggest where people are exposed to radiation, there is about a 200% increase in type 2 diabetes. So, and then you have insulin resistance and leptin resistance. So it's a complex of epigenetic forces that are happening. The only way to treat it, to cure it is the word I want, not treat it, cure it, is to turn off the toxic epigenetic memory.
So one question that comes from that is, when you say radiation,
only one question? You only have one question?
Well, because I don't want to stop you entirely. But the question that comes most immediately is, when you say radiation, I'm assuming you mean ionizing. And if that's true, then it would be an interesting idea to find out the correlation between RF radiation, EMF, and the occurrence.
Well, I'm going to answer both questions. I am talking about Nagasaki and Hiroshima. I'm talking about when they did radiation, atomic bombs in the Bohemian Islands. I'm talking where in Russia the whole plant, blew up. Anyone anywhere near that, the rate of type 1, type 2 diabetes increased by 200%. Now, we also know, and it's in published papers, that EMS, 5G, or 4G is when the research is, all are associated with increased rates of type 2 diabetes.
Okay.
But they're two separate things.
Yeah.
I'm really talking about nuclear blasts, that's what we're talking about.
Okay.
In the region. Or Fukushima, that's a nuclear blast.
Yeah.
60% of kids under 12 having type 2 diabetes is direct result of being oxidized by the radiation. So we have to address and turn off the toxic genetic and epigenetic programs. Because if you don't, if you just try to ameliorate it, drop the blood sugar, you're not getting to the problem. And so it doesn't stop. So when your opening statement is, well, yeah, I mean, people, they take the medication. It doesn't matter. You have to turn off the metabolic program, which is the key to when I say heal, people being healed and staying healed and progressing, in just 3 weeks. Because the other research I compared to was 5.5 months. We got to 46. That's Neil Barnard's work. And he's really good. And he gets what I'm talking about. But cooked food doesn't come anywhere near the power of raw food for healing. So my results at 3 weeks were far superior to just doing a cooked vegan diet.
Isn't it interesting how so much is connected to cooked versus raw, and it's such a deep cultural connection to humanity all over the world right now? I mean, I don't know of any current cultures at all that just use raw food, and yet it's a culture it's a habit that developed against what the body naturally is looking for, which is really interesting.
I can tell you a little bit in India and China, they had so many parasites and amoebas and so many different things that was safer to cook the food. I can tell you the ancient rishis were much healthier, lived longer, but they had a raw food diet.
Right.
Raw food, vegan diet. So there's a little bit with the culture degenerating. It's a little bit with people being focused on their taste. But to me, live food tastes really good. I don't know. So we have all kinds of kind of subtleties in the thing.
Right.
So I can't answer why people moved away from it, but people like fire, they like cooking, they like grains, which you don't really have the grains raw. But it's not totally clear to me what that was about. Okay, to be honest, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I was wondering even how you got the idea that it might have anything to do with live food in the very beginning.
Well, it's simple. I wasn't thinking about diabetes. I wasn't thinking about live food. So, okay, let's start there.
Okay.
But in 1975, I received Shaktipat from Swami Muktananda, and I went into the nothingness. When I came out, a little voice rang out, and I was very inexperienced, okay? A little voice rang out and said, you should learn to eat and live in a way that supports the flow of the Kundalini energy, which is the energy of liberation. You know, Kundalini is the hand of God. It takes you to the heart of God. Okay, so I began doing research in that way. And then incidentally, this is healing diabetes. This is healing most chronic diseases. So it was the purpose was entirely different. It was never about finding a cure for diabetes. It was how do we help us become superconductors of the divine. That was where I was going. And incidentally, I began to discover all these other things.
So did somebody suggest to you that live food would be good for Kundalini, or did you think of that yourself?
I definitely observed it. Yes, I thought of it. I observed it. Certainly in India, you're not thinking live food, right? But I looked at the diets. I saw meat, fish, chicken, and dairy were a clog to the flow of the Kundalini through what we call the nadis, which are your kind of subtle nervous system. So when I eliminated all those things, and then I eliminated the cooked food, I found people had the energy moved more strongly. So it wasn't a theory, honestly. It was like, well, I'm observing what I'm observing. And if people had trouble with Kundalini, they'd start eating meat. How come? Well, because it's a sludge to the movement of the Kundalini. It's the power of death affecting you. So I just began to observe these things from that meditation, from that direction of God.
Okay.
And over a period of about really 7 years, 7 to 8 years, when I wrote my first book, Spiritual Nutrition and the Rainbow Diet, it just became very clear that for spiritual life, it was the most powerful. Then, couldn't help but observe and help heal a lot of chronic diseases as well.
So that kind of observation and pattern recognition and hypothesizing what might be good to do in your life, that's called science, right? I mean, what it's supposed to be.
Real science, yes.
Yeah.
But I also have a background. I published my first paper is in biochemistry and biophysics in college. I had my own laboratory. I was doing, publishing papers, you know. So in biophysics, the first thing was in the Journal of Biophysics, the Biochemistry Acta. You know, it's like, okay, so I already had the background.
Right.
Then I just had to apply the scientific method to a way of seeing what works and what doesn't.
And you had an open mind to observe what you were really seeing rather than putting preconceptions on it. Because I think if that was opened up in most experimenters, they would come up with different answers, right?
The truth is, I had this directive we call Hashmal in Hebrew, the small silent voice of God saying, get this straight.
Right.
Better figure it out. It's like...
That's great.
So I had a different motivation. I wasn't trying to please anyone. Right. It's like, okay, if this is a divine directive, I better take it very seriously.
And everybody has access potentially to that source of direction, right?
Yes. And, you don't have it every moment of your life. That there are different times when it shows up, and it's for 30 seconds, or, it's a whisper. They call it hashma. Ding. That's it. Once in 75, once in 83. It's not like it happens every day.
Right. And there are things
every day. We follow the divine flow every day. But I am talking about a directive, a divine voice coming through.
And there's all kinds of things you can do to make that easier or harder to hear, I would imagine. Right.
Yep. Live food, vegan diet makes it easier to hear. You're more sensitive. just more sensitive. That's all.
And this protocol that you've developed, which we need to talk about in more detail in case people want to try it, has side effects, which is that you may end up curing other things too at the same time, right?
Right. The truth is, a lot of things get cleared up.
Yeah.
And I'm going to talk mostly chronic disease when we're talking about this. Like I had this lady, this is an example. She was 95 years old. She came to the clinic, to our diabetes program, in a wheelchair with high blood pressure on 13 medications. With severe crippling arthritis, so she had to be in the wheelchair. But after 3 weeks, and she had high blood pressure. So after 3 weeks, her diabetes was cured meaning less than 100, no medication.
Right.
She was off all 13 medications. Her arthritis had essentially gone away, and she was out of her wheelchair, and she no longer had a high blood pressure. So that's kind of a nice, clear message. And I saw her a year later in New York, and she was fine. You know, we took a long walk together, and you know, it was like, wow. So she stayed with it because obviously she got really good results. But the point is, chronic diseases, off all medications, 13 medications, out of the wheelchair, no high blood pressure, no diabetes, no arthritis. So yes, the live food diet is the optimal healing diet. Now there's a catch. You have to make it to your constitution. So some people, 70% need a higher protein, and 30% need a lower protein. Now let me clarify that. There's a thing called the mTOR pathway, and it's kind of hinted at in chromosome 19. And basically I said too many things, so let me just go back and go mTOR pathway. So between 35 and 70 grams is the optimum amount of protein you need for longevity. If you're a person who needs higher protein, you'll be closer to 70 grams. So you're a person who needs lower protein, closer to 35 grams. And that gives you longevity and anti-cancer effects. Okay. On chromosome 19, human chromosome 19, it does tell us how much protein, fat, and carbohydrate to have. And part of the success that I have is I don't give the same diet to everybody. We are not a bunch of cows. We have to be different. We are unique. For example, just taking myself here, I was struggling to do 25 pull-ups. Mm-hmm. I know that's a lot. When I was captain of an undefeated football team in college, I could do 7 pull-ups, 70 push-ups. Mm-hmm. So, and I read that people over 65, because I was kind of over 65 then when this came up, you need slightly more protein as part of your lifestyle. I took 1 tablespoon of blue-green algae more a day. That's it. And then in a month, I was up to 70, and eventually got to 100 pull-ups.
That's okay? A lot of pull-ups, yeah.
A lot of pull-ups. And but the point I'm making is I made one minor adjustment. Okay, and I'm a person that doesn't need a lot of protein. I probably was doing 8%. You kind of need between 10 and 15%. I just added 1 tablespoon because I wasn't quite getting enough for optimal performance. Plus, you need more after 65. That's all I did. 1 adjustment, and it worked. So these are fine-tuning. We have to pay attention to what we're doing. We really need to observe our bodies. Right. How much energy do you have? How good do you feel? When you eat, how long do you sustain that? So if you're a person that needs a lot of protein and you don't get a lot, you're going to get hungry in an hour or 2.
Yeah.
I eat 6 hours or 8 hours, and I'm not hungry because I'm what we call slow oxidizer. So I'm making a point about success in this thing. You got to individualize.
Okay, so the question that immediately brings up, I think, is that there's a lot of people in the world that have diabetes right now. And they're probably, even though you're doing major amount of programs working with a lot of people all over the world, that compared to the number of people with diabetes is not a very big percentage, right? Of the total diabetic population at the moment. So my question is, for the people that can't get somebody who knows what you do to individualize their program, but they want to get over diabetes, what are their realistic chances to apply it themselves without supervision?
Very good. But I got to make a point that we're trying to work with countries at a higher political level now because we have data and results. So we are trying to make it more national. That's how I spoke to the Russian, Congress, or Papua New Guinea, or Bali, talked to the governor, and his sister is a doctor, and so I see that we're going to move in that direction. We are moving in that direction. Good. Individual, but that's not your question. So we have on our website, drcousins.com, when we go to it links you to the Tree of Life Foundation, and we have a questionnaire that you can see whether your person needs more or less protein. We also, in my books, Conscious Eating, I have a whole mapping for Ayurvedic, how to figure it out. And my book, There is a Cure for Diabetes. So there's a lot of instruction, and a lot of people can do pretty well. I'm actually not doing more specifically diabetes workshops anymore. It's a 21-day program. Because I now have over 100 programs around the world, and we're trying to bring it more as an educational. So we're training people to be educators in all these different countries. So we have a lot of people. Okay, so that's the way we're going. So, somebody may come here and I may help them for, undo their situation so they can cure that diabetes, but that's more individual. I'm not seeing that many new clients right now, but we're not doing the big programs here. I am doing a little bit in Brazil. So actually the key question is, they can do it because a lot of the directions on the website soon or imminent, since it's all done, we have 52 lessons that people can get about the diabetes.
On drcousins.com?
Yeah, and then it goes to the Tree of Life Foundation. Now, it's been translated into Spanish, Portuguese, obviously English. So it just isn't quite up yet, but it's supposed to be up. It's all done. It's just been a little delay.
And these facilitators that you're training are going to know enough to individualize to some extent, right?
No, they're not trained to do that. They're trained to take blood pressures, fasting blood sugars, and give general diabetic prevention advice.
Okay, got it. So they're educators.
They're educators, right?
Yeah. Okay. One thing, I wish we had like 6 hours for this conversation, but before we get too far along, I wanted to give you a little bit of feedback that we got in from people on the outside with diabetes. A few questions, like 4 of them, and then an example of some drugs that are being prescribed by the current people, in the medical system treating it, and see if you have any comments on those drugs, if they're ones that you know.
I'm not really going to want to do that because it doesn't take us to where we need to go, which is get off all your medications. We know what I will say is metformin, which is a very common one.
Yeah, that's one of them.
It gets about 30% lowering, but on diet alone, you can get better than 50%.
Okay, with no bad side effects, too.
No bad side effects. So what I want to do is kind of approach what you asked in a slightly different way.
Okay.
So metformin gave 31%. Actually, I say 50%. That's very modest. What we know is if you give proper, this is an amazing studies, okay? If you give proper nutritional thing, even if you just give proper and they don't follow it, they get 50% less diabetes.
Right, right.
If people follow 4 out of 5 of the suggestions, 100% prevention of diabetes.
Wow.
So that's very exciting.
And that also reverses the symptoms that they're already having, like heart stuff and neuropathy and all that.
These are people who actually have pre-diabetes. So they have all those things, yes.
Okay.
They get better. So it's very exciting with a little education. Incredible effect. Now there's one other study with Buddhists, vegan, vegetarian Buddhist and meat eating, and it's not a lot, but this is important. Basically, the women are having 1 helping of meat a week, just a week.
Okay.
That's 3%. And when they compared to the vegan women who weren't eating meat, the women eating just 3% a week had 4 times more diabetes.
Wow.
And for the men who ate about 8% a week, 2 helpings a week, what happened to them is that they had half as much diabetes. So that the men who were vegan had the Buddhists. Everything, in other words, the lifestyle was basically the same, just that if you're a man and you ate 8%, compared to 8% to 0, you had half as much diabetes.
Everything else being equal, right? So it was just the meat change.
That was, yeah. So it gives you an idea. Now, there is a drug that really does cause a problem. That's statins, which are given a lot to diabetics. Right. What we find is people who receive statins have 40 to 80% more diabetes. 40 to 80% more diabetes. It's a little bit genetic. You have Caucasian women have about 47%, and then you have Latino, it's about 50, 60%, and then you have Asian, it's close to 70 to 80%. So there's some variations, but the point is the statins will increase it. They will increase your blood sugar. People with diabetes who get statins or not, they have a 39-point raise in their blood sugar versus a 9-point raise. So that particular is a big problem. There are lots of problems with statins, okay, but I'm just talking in terms of diabetes that limit our discussion.
And what about all the people that are also being given high blood pressure medicine? Is there any correlation there?
Well, there is, but let me just say that the research that I'm studying is more about statins. The other research is antibiotics. What they find is that people who have, in 15 years, have 5 antibiotic treatments, courses in 15 years, have 50% more rate of diabetes. Okay, that's significant, obviously. And there's the fluoroisoquinones that are higher, really poison the beta cells. So that's another little thing that adds to the story. Okay, so maybe I should just go a list of things just so people get an idea of what we're talking about. Because I've some people say it's all sugar. It used to be in the 1940s, they said it's fat. We also see meat plays a role, okay? So I'm going to just comment on a few things as I realize our time frame. As you say, we could go on for hours.
Yeah, that'd be fun. We'll do some more later.
So fructose is a big player. People have more than 15 to 25 grams of fructose who will increase your rate of diabetes significantly. Fructose also blocks the hormone called ghrelin, which tells you when you're supposed to stop eating. So the high fructose corn syrup and fructose in general tends to do it. And the other thing is that cancer cells love fructose 10 times more than they love glucose. And fructose also causes inflammation in the brain. So the glia cells of the brain get activated with fructose and they create more brain inflammation. Okay, so soft drinks. What we know about soft drinks is that you're going to have basically a much higher rate of diabetes I won't go about the statistics because I don't want to overwhelm people. We could maybe do a second session on this, but and the non-sugar, the dietetic, give you about 15% more diabetes.
Okay.
They're worse. Okay.
Right.
Mentioned, and then high fat, particularly animal fat, particularly fish fat, attacks and kills the beta cells in the pancreas.
Wow.
And that's and so people eat fish quite often, or like a few times a week. They did a study in England. They have a 38% higher rate of diabetes.
Does that include fish oil capsules that everybody's taking to be healthy?
Let's say it's suggestive that that's the case.
Okay.
But I don't want to make a hardcore statement because there isn't enough data.
Yeah, it's a specific thing. Right.
But there's a little data that does say, it makes your blood sugar go higher and so forth.
Okay.
So I stay away from the fish oils. You can get the omega-3s, long-chain omega-3s, which are very, very good and protect you from all kinds of problems. And that's why you need a certain amount of fat in the diet, which is where we need to end up the discussion. So obesity is a big player. 82% of diabetics are obese in the United States. 82% are overweight, 48% are obese in the United States of diabetics. So that's a pretty big statement, because what happens is you make a lot of leptin, you make a lot of cytokines, which are inflammatory. They come out of the fat. So it inflames the system. Watching TV. Men who watch TV 19 hours a week have 147% increase rate in diabetes.
Wow. And it doesn't matter which program, right?
It doesn't matter which program. You just sit there and they don't even give a reason. They just say, let's just make it simple. Are you watching TV 19 hours a week? That's how they did it. Okay. I mentioned the antibiotics, statins, vaccines. That's more with type 1. Somewhere between 40% and 150% higher rate of diabetes from the autoimmune part. Agrochemicals, cigarettes, low fiber in meat is another one. Lack of exercise, lack of sleep is a big one. People you need about 7 hours sleep, and it needs to be, closer to 10:30 when you go to bed, 10:30 to 5:30, kind of roughly. But definitely, the research is in on that one, that people don't get enough sleep will have higher blood sugars in the morning and be predisposed to developing diabetes.
Okay.
Stress and wheat, soy, and excitotoxins all tend to increase rates of diabetes. Okay. EMFs, cell phones, like we mentioned, increase the rates. I mentioned sleep. Let's see. The other thing, we mentioned radiation, but also psychotropic drugs, antipsychotic drugs, increase your rate of diabetes. And it's circular, but if you've had a major depression within 1 year, somewhere, depending on the study, Kaiser did this and Johns Hopkins did this, 62 to 82% of the people will develop diabetes. One major depression. And we also know people with diabetes have 3 to 4 times the rate of depression.
So the question of whether depression's a cause or an indicator of something else that's causing both, right?
It's circular. If you have a depressive event that's clearly depressive, your chance of getting diabetes is 62 to 82% in the next year. Right. A person that wasn't. But people who have diabetes generally have 3 to 4 times more the rate of depression. So I think it goes both ways. Okay. It's not the chicken and the egg. I think they're two different causal factors.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so I look at the thing, and what are the causes of diabetes? Okay, glucose and fructose, most people get that. Most people don't get the fructose causes it, but it causes it by creating a metabolic dysregulation of the hormones rather than directly raising your blood sugar.
Right.
Eating animal meat and animal fat. Those are your three causes that are all way up there in terms of creating diabetes. I mentioned people eat meat on a regular basis of 35 to 50% more diabetes. And in World War II, when they dropped the sugar, like during World War I and World War II, the rate of diabetes went down. So there are not one single causal factor. It's several.
Yeah.
Animal fat, animal protein. And what's the trick with animal protein? Well, it's very high in leucine, and leucine destroys the beta cells of the pancreas. It's also high in methionine, which is not as toxic as leucine, but also destroys the beta cells of the pancreas. So we have all these factors playing. We have animal fat, which I mentioned, particularly the fish fat, and we actually have the protein. And estrogen tends to increase the rate of diabetes, and vegan women have about half the amount of estrogen in their stool samples, which is related to your diet. So there's more estrogen in the animal protein.
Those two amino acids that you mentioned, does conventional nutrition consider those something that you don't need at all, or that you need some, but if you have too much, it's toxic? Or what's the idea on those two?
The second. Yeah, we need all of them, but it's the amount of lysine that we're talking about is you would have to eat 100 apples a day to get that.
Okay.
So you don't need nearly as much. Do you need a little bit? Yeah, you need a little bit. Not a whole lot.
Okay.
You see what I'm trying to say here?
Yeah, you're not saying don't ever eat anything with leucine or methionine. You're just saying that if it's way out of balance in some foods, that's going to hurt you, or could.
Right. And it is in meat, it's just much higher.
Okay, got it.
And that relates, besides animal fat, which kills the beta cells of the pancreas, it also relates to animal protein, which is higher in leucine and methionine. So those are two vectors that say, well, yeah, you're eating meat on a regular basis, you're going to have 35 to 50% more diabetes.
Okay.
So these are, I think, just important to get a feeling for, the causative factors. Do you have any other questions that come to your mind? Because we have lots of things.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to cut into the time too much, but there are a lot of people that are complaining about, and it's connected to the diabetes, but neuropathy and pain from neuropathy and not being able to feel their feet, and it makes them fall over when they try to walk eventually, and they end up in walkers and worse than that. And so when they say, well, what can we do to help that? The answer to all these things is going to be the basic changeover to your protocol, right?
Yes. And they need to get a workup for diabetes. I mean, people don't really give it the attention. Oh, well, a neuropathy. Well, neuropathy is a major symptom in type 2 diabetes that's been progressed. Just like loss of memory, like decreased brain function, but people aren't tuning into it. So, I can just, go anywhere and I can tell if somebody has diabetes, because I can see how their brain isn't working.
Right. So when you say a workup, assuming that they're not able to talk to you in person, what's a workup and where do you get one if everybody should have one that has neuropathy?
I would say that you have to get some blood tests. So you need to go to a doctor who's willing to get a glucose tolerance. Well, glucose tolerance is what I call the gold standard. You take some sugar and then you see how your body handles it. And there's a curve and a variety of patterns that you see. Short of that, you want an A1C, which is somewhat accurate. That's the amount of glucose or fructose connected to hemoglobin. You want a fasting insulin and fasting leptin. Now, there are tighter standards. So a fasting insulin above 10 is, I consider, abnormal. Is it's prediabetes.
Okay.
Some lab tests will say up to 25, but in terms of getting better than gross, if you're more than 10, almost everybody I see it's more than 10 has some level of diabetes. And leptin, they need a fasting leptin as well. So those three give you a pretty good feeling. And C-reactive protein, which measures the amount of inflammation in the body.
So you have to try to find a doctor or a lab somewhere that will do the test, and then you have to escape before they put you on drugs.
Well, you still have options, right? It's not like because if somebody says it, you have to do it.
Well, but I mean, they're trying to get you to not realize that and say, okay, now because of these tests, this is what you have to do now, right?
Right, and you just say, well, look, I have this book. It says there is a cure to diabetes. I think I'm going to follow a dietary approach. It's far more effective than your drugs.
Yeah, okay. So read the book and get the tests.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. And then
it's a big deal, and a lot of people, suffer. I mean, there are other causes. You can have spinal problems and so forth and so on too.
Right. And there are a lot of drugs that have a side effect of neuropathy, right? Just from the drug.
Yeah. And the answer again would be, that's why you have to check it out and see, well, is it from this? Is it from that?
Right.
So if all your tests are normal, like I mentioned, then you have to think there's another cause.
What you mentioned that in addition to the lifestyle with the live food and everything, the people that went through your 3-week thing, like the one that's on video and others like it, they got off their drugs. And I think that's an important element because all the side effects from those drugs go away and their synergistic toxicity goes away. And the question is, if you can't find a doctor that really thinks it's great to get people off drugs, can you do that yourself or not? I mean, what's the deal with that?
I recommend, not just because of avoiding malpractice advice, okay?
Yeah.
You really need to have someone who can work with you to guide you. It's just so much safer.
So you're going to need a really specific type of doctor who's got a certain attitude and openness.
That's got a certain attitude. You do need someone who has some background. What I just gave you is more than most doctors know, certainly more than I was taught in medical school. Okay?
Right.
But I really do recommend if you want to do this. I mean, I've seen people get off on their own. I don't really recommend it. I think it's easy to get lost along the way here. So I think you need someone to work with.
Okay, so there's a real need for a doctor that understands the value of lifestyle-oriented medicine, basically.
Right, and more that's happening.
Okay.
We're more available. So it's way safer.
Yeah, I agree.
So I'm just going to mention about the artificial sweeteners. Because that's a main point of delusion. Sucralose, aspartame, saccharin, they all create diabetes. Okay, wow. And the research really proves that. And basically, they somehow get broken down or disoriented our bowel biome, and then it triggers diabetes. Basically, the research there's a lot of research out there that really shows that those who consume artificial sweeteners have much worse blood sugar patterns.
What about all the natural healing people who talk about the only good alternative is stevia? What do you think about that?
Stevia tends to drop your blood sugar. It does not have a problem the way we're talking. Okay. But let me give you a little bit. I call it diabetes or diet.
Okay.
So basically, 1 can of soda per week increases the rate of diabetes by 33%. 2 cans a week increases it by 50%.
Okay.
So you get an idea.
Yeah.
And then they say if you do the diet, it adds another 15% on. Okay. A woman who drink 50 ounces of diet soda a week, which isn't that much, increase their risk of diabetes by 60%.
And you're saying the diet soda is worse than the sugar soda?
I'm definitely saying that. If you had 50 ounces of diet soda a week, you had a 60% higher rate of getting diabetes than soda drinkers with the sugar.
Okay.
So soda itself is a problem, but diet soda is going to get at least 15% worse results. Okay, so I think that's an important thing for people to get. Diet soda doesn't work. Okay, and basically, depending on the research, it increases the rate of diabetes from 25% to 1,000%.
Wow.
I mean, the research varies, is what we're saying. Yeah. But in any case, it still increases the rate at the lowest by 25%.
Yeah.
And it affects heart health as well. So those are the key concepts here. So
if they want to prevent the heart disease, again, you're back to the protocol, right?
Right.
That's the way to do it.
Right. So, but we've broadened people's understanding. It isn't just sugar. It isn't just fructose, which disorganizes the hormonal. It is animal fat and animal protein and sugar, all three that are, majorly associated with increased rates of diabetes. The good news is 88%, even type 1 diabetics, have beta cells. We can rebuild them.
Okay.
With herbs and the proper thing. I'm not going into herbs because that's a little bit too medical, and everybody's unique in that way.
Right.
But I am making the point here. Let's see what else I want to say. Do you have any other questions before I get to where I'm going?
Well, yeah, one of the things, since all signs from, how do we prevent heart disease from this? How do we get rid of neuropathy? How do we deal with pain? They all go back to doing this protocol. And in 3 weeks, you're saying this big effect happens, but it's really important so that you're not one of those people that doesn't get the full result, to keep it going beyond 3 weeks. And
well, let's put it this way. If you get a headache from hitting your head against the wall, and you stop hitting your head against the wall, your headache goes away.
Yeah.
And say, well, it's been 3 weeks. Now I can hit my head against the wall. Guess what's going to happen? Your headache's going to come back.
Yeah, that seems like it's logical, actually. And if you want to keep going and not start hitting your head again, what are the issues that you have found? I mean, this might be too much, but just this idea. What are the issues that you find stop people from continuing the protocol the way they could?
Well, I want to mention one more thing. I forgot to talk about eggs.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And not the egg on the situation, but okay.
I understand totally, yeah.
So 1 egg a week will increase your rate of diabetes by 76%. 2 eggs a week doubles it. 3 eggs a week triples it. It just gets worse.
Does this include raw eggs too? Same thing?
Well, they're not that sophisticated in the research, okay?
Okay. They probably cooked them in the research.
Most likely. But 1 egg per day kind of doubles your rate of mortality. So
it's huge.
It's a pretty big thing. Okay,
right.
So I think that's a key understanding. So where do we go with all this? Well, the first thing I think it's worth understanding is what's the optimum diet? Okay, so I have to talk about the low-fat diets have some real dangers. What am I saying? Well, what I'm saying is people who have a cholesterol between 160 and 260 have no increased rates of heart disease.
Okay.
That's been proven to be a mythology.
Okay.
Women with a blood cholesterol of 270 actually live 28% longer.
So it might be above 260 that you could make that first statement.
Yeah, but I'm making it more for women because that's what the research was.
Okay.
But okay, so that's kind of the first thing. You need your fats. People who are low in cholesterol have up to 6 times more suicide. 6 times more.
Yeah.
If you're at the 25th percentile, you double your rate of suicide. I even knew that in medical school. Okay, so cholesterol is a big deal. We don't want to go low cholesterol.
Right.
So people try to go low cholesterol, they're looking for trouble for themselves. And people on this protocol really run about 160, which is 160 to 260 is your safe zone.
So they're on the lower edge of that.
Yeah, but it's still, it's fine.
Okay.
But this low-fat diet has some dangers because you need a certain amount of cholesterol for brain function. We know with age, your brain function improves, and holds it when you have a higher cholesterol. When you drop your cholesterol, you actually start losing IQ, brain function. So that's kind of really important. That's also.
Sorry. The detox portion of this, because there's detox and then there's rebuilding in general. And during the detox part, you're not eating a bunch of cholesterol. So I'm assuming that it takes more than 3 weeks to have any danger from your cholesterol not being adequate.
Yes. Low cholesterol has some problems. So we're looking chronic. We're not looking, so 3 weeks is no big deal.
Okay.
People who run generally low cholesterol are going to have more neurological problems, more cognitive decline. Those are two pieces, and up to 6 times higher rate of suicide, emotional imbalances, and more accidents. That's what the research shows.
Probably more neuropathy too, you would think, right?
Well, the answer is yes, but that takes us to the long-chain omega-3s.
Okay.
And the long-chain omega-3s, I think, are more important with the neuropathy. And also, R-lipoic acid helps with that. And the long-chain omega-3s improve brain function. They protect women during pregnancy. 95% of women who are pregnant are low in long-chain omega-3s. Postpartum depression is a result of having low DHA, and it's easily treated by giving women DHA from yellow algae, not from fish.
Right.
So we really have to make sure we have good levels of that. That's how I put it. For the DHA, generally research is suggesting around 1,200, and for the EPA, 400 to 600 per day. They help a lot with mental problems. Very important in terms of my book, Depression Free for Life. We really have to have an adequate DHA and EPA. It's actually quite important for that. So we need that. Also, they help with anxiety. They help improve gala-aminobutyric acid production, which helps you relax and be more peaceful. It improves acetylcholine production, which helps your memory. It also decreases your stress hormones like cortisol by 50%. It's a big deal, so we don't want to go low. That's why those 10% low-fat diet actually is a little dangerous from my point of view. So I think we're looking at what I recommend for people with diabetes, 25 to 35% complex carbohydrates, vegetables, and no grains here, but vegetables, sea vegetables. I'm going to just say you can have little fruit, bilberries, blueberries, and green apples. Don't seem to raise the blood sugar. Don't seem to be a problem with this. Those are your kind of bigger players, but all the vegetables, all the leafy greens, all the sprouts, those are really, really generally going to be good foods to help you come into balance, because that's the diet people are on. So it's people who don't have diabetes, 25 to 45% carbs, healthy carbs. It's a little bit like the ketogenic diet, okay? Mm-hmm. And then protein is 10 to 15%. Somebody like me is going to be closer to 10%. A person that needs higher protein would be 15, 20%, something like that. And fat, 25 to 45%, but it has to be plant fat. Avocados, olives, nuts and seeds, that kind of fat.
Well,
And that is a pretty optimal diet. You just have to figure out the balance for yourself.
where in that diet are the main complex carbohydrates coming from?
Really from your leafy greens.
Okay.
And, I don't do a lot of grains. I personally don't do grains, but and there's a little bit of research. We call it the grain brain. Dr. Perlmutter talked about it, and it is associated with some levels of mental decline. We find that people over 70 who do a high complex carbohydrate diet have 4 times greater cognitive decline.
And that's coming from cooked grains, what you're talking about, right?
Yes, I'm saying. Now, the Taoists understood that, and they had a term called Bi-Gu, no grains.
Huh.
Bi-Gu. And you know when they knew that? 475 BC.
Right. Yeah, they knew some things then that they don't know now, I guess.
The women Taoists, even in the 11th century, said if you cook your food, you won't walk on the jewel pan. Jewel pan in the women's, Taoist is liberation.
Wow, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, and the Bi-Gu is no grains. That's for both. So they understood there's some problems here. Did they know about glutamine and the different things like gluten and things like that? And probably not. They just knew they actually said, like, it's got 3 demons to deal with.
Right.
You have gluten and your gliadin. You got inflammation of the whole nervous system from those things. They knew that. They knew by observation. They didn't say, oh, it was gluten. No. It was gliadin. No, because they didn't know those things. They just observed.
Right. And it's a good example that you don't need to micromanage and name everything in order to know whether to do something or not do it.
Exactly. So on this diet, I compared when I worked at Dr. Esselstyn's and Dean Ornish's, and those Esselstyn's and Ornish's were 10% fat diet, low-fat diet.
Right.
Mine's 25 to 45% plant fat.
They were higher protein too, right?
And they were higher in carbs. 10% fat, 70% carbs.
Okay.
And Ornish was 75%. And basically, Esselstyn had, in this particular study, everybody on statins. So his cholesterol people were 137, which is, to me, too low, dangerously low.
Yeah.
My people's cholesterol was 159. Ornish's is 173, which is fine range. Triglycerides, which are a problem, our folks were at 69, and Esselstyn's was 173, and Ornish's is 252. I like it to be less than 100. But triglycerides are raised by high carbohydrate, so there you go.
Right.
There's the higher carbohydrate diet, whereas mine is more like a mild ketogenic diet. Okay? So...
And a raw ketogenic diet, too.
Yeah, in addition to that, right.
Yeah.
But I'm just showing the difference is that when we use 25 to 45% plant fat, we actually get pretty low cholesterols anyway, lower than Ornish's 10% fat, which was 173. Particularly that I'm going to say the triglycerides, which are a problem. Ours are really good scores, but Esselstyn's was 173 and Ornish's 252. I like it less than 100.
Right. Okay.
So we see there are real results, with a live food diet, that things are simply better. I'm just looking at our time, and I think I'd like to end with just going over what I call the kind of the 12 main points. Okay.
Yeah.
I've covered everything in a different kind of way. I did mention cacao, but it turns out that cacao decreases the rate of diabetes by 34%, which newer research, fascinating. actually. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
And it opens up your circulation. It's really good for heart health. It's really good for brain health. But we're talking diabetes today. Okay, so that's kind of what we're looking at. So, what are my 12 recommendations? Okay, which are generally for good health. Well, first, avoid the carbohydrates except for leafy greens, non-starchy fibrous vegetables, sprouts, and sea vegetables. Okay, and then these people were on 100% live food. If you go 80%, I allow cooked beans and lentils in that story. If we're doing 80%.
Cooked potatoes?
For the healing, it's 100%.
On the 80%, do they have potatoes and that sort of thing too for carbs?
No. White potatoes they're 100% glycemic, but your yams, they're a little bit, that's okay.
Okay.
Doesn't seem to raise the blood sugar in the same way.
Okay.
So for diabetes, 25 to 35% carbohydrate. But, and again, this is a little bit of a ketogenic effect. I'm not doing it for that reason, but I will tell you that's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
The power of live food is indisputable, and also organic. Gotta go organic. Without those are your two healing forces that are really, really important. Live food also, this is point 3, decreases peri-inflammation. Remember, inflammation's driving force behind all chronic disease.
Yeah.
You got to get that. You had all chronic disease. Okay? Most of our people lost about 18 pounds in 3 weeks. We weren't they could eat as much as they want, whatever. I had one guy lose up to 48 pounds.
Wow. What about...
He was insulin resistant, and he was having 200 units of insulin, and insulin makes you gain weight. So there's a few pieces, but he lost 48 pounds in 3 weeks.
Wow.
Without trying. It just happened.
What about the nutrition teachers who say, well, yeah, raw food has more nutrients, but it's a lot harder to digest than something that's all cooked up? What do you say to that?
Well, when you cook food, you lose 50% of the protein, 60 to 70% of the vitamins and minerals, and up to 95% of the phytonutrients.
Right.
So literally, the big mistake with live food is eating too much, is that you're eating as if it's cooked food. When you eat half as much, you have enough digestive power to make it work. Generally, however, although I'm not taking digestive enzymes now, I don't know what the reason is, but I don't need it anymore. Don't ask me why, because I can't explain it. At 77, I can't explain why I'm not needing digestive enzymes.
Right.
But I generally recommend people take digestive enzymes that will help with that. But by and large, you're getting a lot more nutrition, but you need to eat less, so your digestive fire is stronger. So and it's also true with just a few nutrients, like lycopene. We know a cooked tomato concentrates and dehydrates the food, and you're going to get more lycopene. Okay? The question is, we don't have a minimum. So so what if you eat 2 tomatoes instead of 1 that's cooked?
Yeah.
You're still going to get enough. So we're not suffering from lycopene deficiency. That's where that question came up generally.
Oh, okay.
And my answer is, yeah, you can better absorb, cooked food to get the lycopene. That's not true with all nutrients. But when you eat half as much and you're getting, double the amount of nutrients or triple the amount of nutrients, you get a much better deal. And you don't get any phytonutrients when you cook the food.
Well, I don't think that modern science doesn't recognize life force as the primary nutrient.
Well, no, you got just where I'm going. You're very perceptive. It's very good. You're perceptive. And that's the bottom line. When you cook food, it loses its life force. So that's measurable. So we know that people eating junk food we call biophotons. And Dr. Popp in Germany actually did research where he could measure the biophotons coming off a person. Person eating junk food had 1% of biophotons, or 1,000 biophotons. If you're doing cooked organic, you were getting 23% biophoton energy. 23,000 is how we termed it. If you're a newborn baby, you're at 43,000 coming off your body. If you're eating live food, you're at 83,000. Wow. If you're using some of the herbs, the Chinese herbs and things, you're up to 116,000. So you're getting junk food, cooked food versus live food, you're getting 83 times more biophoton energy. So food has energy, and when you cook it, it loses a great deal of its energy. And we've showed it in a variety of ways with Carillion photography and so forth. Yeah. And basically, we're taking in the energy of the food. And that's one of the real secrets. Besides the fact that you get all the phytonutrients, 95% which are destroyed when you cook it.
Yeah.
So you can say you get better assimilation of lycopene, but what about all the rest? Because there's nothing to assimilate, because it's been destroyed. 50% of the protein is coagulated. Well, great. Now you have to eat twice as much protein if you're doing cooked food.
Yeah, and there's a question whether twice as much of a poor quality makes up for the difference anyway, right?
Well, there's no question it doesn't. Okay?
Yeah. So
you're very attuned. It's good. So plant source only for diabetes, you're really going to have 35 to 50% less diabetes. Organic food is super important because the pesticides and herbicides poison the beta cells of the pancreas. Moderate exercise, get enough sleep, at least 7 hours. That's a hard one. That's my biggest challenge, getting 7 hours. Right. I just keep going at night, The power of meditation, which is part of our program.
Yeah.
And we know meditators, we've been meditating for 5 years. The physiology is about 15 years younger. We've known that. And individualizing your diet, you need more protein, less protein. How do you individualize it? And finally, the overall synergistic effect. And finally, the 12th point is loving yourself enough to want to heal yourself.
Yeah, good idea.
And that's what happens as you start to do this.
People think they can love somebody else and not themselves. I don't think it works.
Right. So basically, as Ralph Waldo Emerson said, society is always surprised by any new example of common sense.
Wow. Yeah.
That's what we're talking about. This is not, it's not a biophysics issue, right? It's like, well, a little common sense here.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the overview. I know we went over a little bit, but this is good.
That's fine.
I get enthusiastic about it. I like to share. And you asked really good questions. You really understand actually a lot more about food than most people do. So it's like, this is good.
Well, it's super exciting because it starts giving you a glimpse of what the world could be like.
Yes.
This could be within certain limits, it could be a really good place, even on the physical level.
Yes, absolutely. Well, remember, it's a good place on the internal level.
Right. But even given the limitations of being in a physical body and everything, it could still be pretty incredible. Yeah.
The point I'm making is in the physical body, if our consciousness is kind of in a aligned place, it's a lot of fun.
And that's also where the ability to understand everything you've just said comes from. Right.
Right.
So, well, that's fun. I hope we can, do some more pretty soon. Because
I'm always happy to work with you as I get a little free time here and there.
Yeah, I just have to see what the time.
You do a really good interview. I'm pleased. Your questions are great. So it's always fun to work with you.
Yeah, it's a good excuse to get to visit with you again too. So,
and you're making a contribution to the world. I love it. I think it's great.
Well, yeah, I think doing as much as you can is 100% selfish because it just makes you feel good to be involved in that flow of energy. And I don't think anybody's ever existed in creation that hasn't been 100% selfish. It's just when you start understanding that there's only one being. That's the only way you could really be.
Well, there are different ways of being selfish. If you're talking about focusing on the self, which is the one within all,
sure,
and that's what we're talking about. It's a higher form of selfish because you're focusing on the truth of who you are.
Yeah. It's not like you're becoming unselfish. It's just you started out thinking, oh, if I rob a bank and kill all these people, I'm going to really push myself up by comparison. That's the, early stages. And then later on you find, wait a minute, I don't even want to hurt anybody's feelings. They're all me in other forms.
Right. And that's the point. So that's the real selfish attitude.
Yeah.
God in all things, in all people.
Super exciting. Okay, well, that was fun. I hope we can do more soon. And hold on, and we'll say goodbye in the break here.
Okay, well, I want to bless all the listeners.
Okay, let's do that.
That as you eat this way, you are able to become more and more a superconductor of the divine and share your light and love with everyone around you.
Yeah.
Amen. Home.
Okay. So there goes Dr. Cousens. I hope you all enjoyed that as much as I did. I think he's always so well prepared for everything, and especially discussion about diabetes, because it's what he's been doing for decades. And as he said, he's working all over the world. And by, still being willing to courageously use the word cure, which you're not ever supposed to use anymore. You're supposed to, especially if you're a doctor, you're supposed to say manage, because otherwise, how can you keep the person on drugs? And he's doing something, obviously, just the opposite, which is very inspiring. And we did mention at least the side effects of curing diabetes is not like the negative side effects that are listed on most so-called medicine. It's good side effects. Your attitude is better, depression goes away, other diseases go away, you're not as susceptible to infectious disease, you live longer, you're more peaceful and relaxed, and you have a better life quality, all these things. Those are what should be side effects on any medicine, according to what Hippocrates was pushing of just, at least don't hurt anybody, don't do no harm, which a doctor like Dr. Cousens, that's what he's actually doing, and it should be the norm everywhere. So I think he needs as much support and exposure as possible. He's written a lot of books, which I think they're available on his site or also on Amazon and other book dealers. And he mentioned the site drcousens.com. You could take a look there. And there's going to be more material posted on that site as he goes along. He's involved in a lot of research and teaching in countries everywhere. He's got a lot of traveling to do. He's leaving again in the middle part of October. And we'll stay in touch once in a while, but I just really appreciate it. I think the reason that I was able to, at least on the surface, to get in touch with him is I met him at a raw food festival in Sedona, Arizona. And I always thought it would be really great if he'd be willing to come on even a small show like ours on Lost Arts Radio. And he was nice about it and was willing to do it. A lot of people, once they get world famous like he is, won't ever talk to anybody who's not a huge outlet, and he's willing to do that. So I think that's very kind on his part. And anyway, so the website, drcousens.com, and look at all of his book titles that you can easily find. He's also got a lot of talks on YouTube that are easy to find. Just put in his name, Dr. Cousens, which is Cousens, not INS, but Cousens on YouTube and other platforms. I think he's showing up on Brighteon.com now, which is great because they're not going to be censoring us. Our channel over there if you ever want to see it. And I recommend that's where you watch our material because it will stay there. And that's Brighteon, BRIGHTEON.com /channel/Lost Arts Radio. And we have a lot of videos up there already thanks to Doug's work. But anyway, spread the awareness of Brighteon.com. I want to see it grow as fast as possible just by people using it. Also check out planetaryhealingclub.com. That's for people that are actually wanting to work on these things in their own lives and support each other and talk about anything you want in the realm of health and consciousness and everything in between, which is pretty much everything. And that's a support type group, and I'm there live every week, as is Doug and all the members of the group. You can access it via planetaryhealingclub.com. If you go there and you're not sure whether you want to join us or not, you're welcome to write any questions to me if you want to. Richard@lostartsradio.com, and I'll read it and answer you. Because it's not a spectator place. It's you're not put on any pressure to be in it, but you're exposed to a lot of material that you can then hopefully use for your own program of self-improvement and getting your health back, learning all this information about real health, laws of nature and stuff like that that's been known for so many thousands of years, and it's not really supported anymore, and it's valuable tools that you can use to be your own doctor and take back your own well-being and high state of health, and get rid of the usual horrible degeneration that you're supposed to experience in so-called old age and susceptibility to all these infectious diseases. You can radically alter that, and that's not me saying it. It's information from long, long ago, when in some ways some people knew a lot more than we do now. So that's at planetaryhealingclub.com. There are small dues for that, but we're trying to eventually build a school, and we're not really pushing any products. And it also just, on a small scale, helps us keep going. So, and anybody that wants to support our work in that way, we have a new page at subscribestar.com/lostartsradio. And not for, if you're having a really hard time with money, please don't donate anything. But if you have resources and you want to help the work that we're doing, please go there and donate whatever you can. It's greatly appreciated. Check out the club, check out the free videos that we make during the week, and the Sunday show, as usual, has been going on for years, and that is every Sunday evening at 6 p.m. Pacific time, 9 p.m. Eastern, whether it's Standard or Pacific, depending on the season. And those are all inspiring guests like Dr. Cousins and a lot of other interesting people. All the archives are available through the platforms that you see it on at the moment. They're all on the major platforms too, and on reachable through lostartsradio.com. So anyway, hope that everything's going great for you. It's really nice of you to spend some time with us. I know it's valuable, and I appreciate that. And hope to see you again very shortly. Have a good week.
Introducing Lost Arts Radio on subscribestar.com. Just go to subscribestar.com/lostartsradio to find our rewards program, offering 10 different giving levels starting at just $5 a month. We offer incredible value for any rewards level, from extra monthly interview videos not available publicly to subscription-based Planetary Healing Club videos once, twice, or 3 times a month, to private counseling sessions with Lost Arts Radio host Richard Sachs, to tech help with me, Doug Diamond. We even have one option where you can be the star on Lost Arts Radio as our guest on a specially produced show just for you. We conduct an interview with you and broadcast it to our growing network and listenership. Our Subscribe Star levels are one of a kind and offer great rewards for any budget. Please help support Lost Arts Radio. We can't do it without you. With increasing censorship on many of our channels, we really need your support today to keep doing what we're doing. As Richard says, we're not even at survival level yet. Lost Arts Radio has 3 weekly shows. Lost Arts Radio Live each Saturday night at 7:30 Eastern, 4:30 Pacific, which is a live stream currently on multiple platforms in case we get banned from some of the larger ones. Right now, we're on 2 YouTube channels, Facebook Live, Periscope, which is Twitter, Twitch, and DLive. You can access these broadcasts by going to www.lostartsradio.com/live for all the links to those channels. The Planetary Healing Club meets right after Lost Arts Radio Live at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific on Saturday nights. And our Sunday show with guests airs at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific on Sunday nights on our Blog Talk Radio channel, our YouTube channels, Facebook pages, and on Brighteon. Be sure to sign up for our free email list just in case we do get banned on big tech's platforms. It's just a matter of time, really. They don't like the stuff we talk about, and they do not want the truth out there. In fact, they have already attacked us numerous times. Join our free email list so we can let you know where we are and how to access our shows. The sign-up button is right on the top right on most pages of our website. The best starting point for all things Lost Arts Radio is our main site, lostartsradio.com, where you can find the hottest news selection videos that we curate just for you. Those are on the homepage and added to daily, as well as articles and breaking news about information you really need to know. Our show archives, the 10 most recent shows, are right on our homepage, as well as our Blog Talk Radio page at blogtalkradio.com/lostartsradio, or just click the All Things Radio Show tab right on our website. We're in the podcast directory on iTunes, and all of our shows except the banned ones are on our YouTube channels at Lost Arts Radio and at Diamond Disc. Our Brighteon page is really taking off, and we often have editors' picks videos right on their homepage. Visit brighteon.com/channel/LostArtsRadio. On our site, you can also access our free listener forum as well as sign up for the Planetary Healing Club, which is just $25 a month, where you get private access to a one-on-one interaction with host Richard Sachs and myself and the other club members who participate live. More info can be found at planetaryhealingclub.com. We're providing solutions in there to make the world a better place. Come join us. Stay tuned, because up next, you'll get to hear a really great song by an independent artist that we're doing our best to support. Go to lostartsradio.com/music for the full list of all the great songs and bands that we spin on our audio-only podcast shows. If you're in a band and want to submit a song for consideration for airplay on Lost Arts Radio, visit my website at diamonddiscaudio.com for more information about the music placement, mastering, and mixing work that I do. Thanks again for listening to and supporting Lost Arts Radio. We love having you as part of our family to learn, experience, and grow with.
There are so many things to be, but in the glare of harsh realities, there's too much suffering I see. If you gave me just one wish, only one would work for me. Nothing else could really make much sense, 'cause Lord, I'd wish that I could heal. Yeah, I'd wish that I could heal. I wish that I could heal. Would you wish that you could fly to the moon and back, or that you could be invisible and live your life and leave no tracks? Or that you'd be the most beautiful and have the world lounge at your feet? I know I'd pass on all of these if I could only learn to heal. hatred and heal the wars. Clean the slates that hold the scars. Heal the health and all the pain. Heal everything driving us insane. Heal the present and heal the past. Heal the planet so it will last. Heal the marriage that's on the rocks. Heal the hearts encased in locks. Heal the fears that hold you back and help to get your life on track. Heal the government and corporate whores who rob us blind and block the doors. Lord, I'll offer a great deal if you help me learn to heal. Oh, I wish that I could heal. I wish that I could heal. Hey, hi-ya, hey, hey, hi-ya, hey, hi-ya, hey, hey, hi-ya, hey. Would you wish for a peaceful world and a contented heart? Or would you give your wish to someone else and give their lives a brand new start? Would you help every dream come true for any person in the world? You'll do this and so much more if you'll only learn to heal. Hey! Heal the hatred and heal the wars. Clean the slates that hold the scars. Heal the health and all the pain. Heal everything driving us insane. Heal the present and heal the past. Heal the planet so it will last. Heal the marriage that's on the rocks. Heal the heart encased in locks. Heal the fears that hold you back and help to get your life on track. Heal the government and corporate whores who rob us blind and lock the doors. Lord, I'll offer a great deal if you'll teach us how to heal. Oh, I wish that we could heal. I wish that I could heal. If you help me learn to heal.
Hi-ya,